Where's that little fella going? Unless they see me and they're just... Jesus Harold Christ. H stands for Harold, right? Are the first words that I think of when it comes to describing Into the Radius for several different reasons. One, because this game has consistently made me jump out of my own skin. Oh God! Two, because of the insane level of detail that truly immerses me into the experience of the world and the game itself. And three, because I just like saying three, to be honest with you. Into the Radius should be a game that needs no mention whatsoever when it comes to the top of people's VR lists. Yet for some reason, when I look at it, it still feels like it's a little underrated when it comes to the top of people's VR mentions. Now that there's a sequel officially coming out, I decided to take one last look at Into the Radius for old time's sake to see what kind of an amazing experience this game has to offer. Now, although this probably isn't the first time you've heard about Into the Radius, you haven't heard me talk about it. Into the Radius definitely felt like one of the first games of its kind with the level of detail that it had even at its release, only which continued to be built upon more and more with each update. The thing that I have to reward it with the most is just the level of immersive atmosphere in the mysterious world that you're dumped in. You might not have as much information or context to the story or about what's happened, yet you can gather that sort of information through the logs and the missions that you're sent on to gather supplies and complete certain tasks. What I love about it is that I find myself getting so immersed in the world because when I'm exploring, it creates an atmosphere where I never fully feel safe unless I'm at my home base. Whether it's from the great sound design, something right here. I just saw you, yep. The ominous music definitely plays a factor. The mysterious and weird threats in the world. Later. I want to be able to just like... Or the giant fucking Majora's Mask moon looking wannabe thing. Or just the fact that I'm completely and utterly alone in this world. Things are just in a constant state of unsettling. Now looking back, I never really got too deep into actually discovering and like learning about the lore of the game, and I kind of just like thrived and survived for as long as I possibly could have. But actually looking back and taking time to learn about the world is actually extremely interesting, and it helps make things that much more engaging when you actually like learn about the world and the things in it. Why the things are the way they are, and why you're the only person left exploring it. You're set out to raid day in and day out to get new supplies for yourself to be able to defend yourself and complete further missions. Yet along with this, you're actually under pressure. The Tide. The Tide is a timed world event that resets the entire radius every 5 days, or like 2 real-life hours, and resets basically every enemy and piece of loot throughout the map. Not to be the exact same thing, it kind of like resets all the enemies and then like random generates new loot, but it's not like you're also, like it'll generate like low tier loot in like different places, so it's not like you're gonna find like the best sniper rifle just after like one tide in like the first area or anything. Just even an event like this, always constantly keeping you under pressure, stands out so much from the average VR game that I don't think it's actually talked about enough. Dropped into the world, you're left with several different things at your home base to discover, as well as environmental storytelling to show what's beyond your home. Yet with all these things left for me to learn about, the first thing I did was immediately pick up a nicotine addiction. I don't know what it is about smoking in VR games, but I found in this game, as well as The Walking Dead, the constant need to just shove as many cigarettes down my fucking windpipe as I could is unfathomable. Maybe because I don't actually smoke IRL, but I just don't know why I constantly have to sit there with a cigarette in my mouth. It just feels cool or more engaging. Besides my crippling nicotine addiction, I think the pacing and the progression of the game is truly amazing. Beyond your home comes the radius, where you'll encounter fragments, phantoms, weird distorted anomalies, and so much more, as well as weird ash statues of past people that were annihilated, I guess? But there's also one weird white one that communicates with you throughout your gameplay. Not a precious little girl. You'll also encounter these freaky but really interesting looking environments where it almost feels like you walked into a picture, with objects frozen in time, floating in the air in a still. I also like how they actually design the inventory and the HUD, where your health, energy, and food are located on your watch on your left hand, and you can store knives or machetes or like empty bullet casings to find anomalies on your arms. You also have slots on your chest and a small bag for flashlights or first aid or other items as well. Lastly, you have a backpack for collecting materials, which actually holds some sort of physical space and has a weight limit, so you have to actually think about what you're carrying on these expeditions. It isn't necessarily sort of like Ghost of Tabor's backpack, where physical items can actually collide with each other, so you actually have to like play Jenga with your backpack, but instead you actually do place objects in a specific area, so you gotta make sure if you have any extra magazines, you gotta put them in convenient places, or if you have any extra meds, you gotta bury it in a place where you don't have to constantly sort through the rubble of your backpack if you're in the middle of a firefight. So it does require some thinking. I actually found myself in some troubling situations where I realized all the magazines on my chests were chests. I have multiple chests where all the magazines on my chest were actually finished. So then I had to reach into my backpack to grab some extra rounds, but I had already spent the last like 20 minutes on an expedition in the first place, and my backpack was an absolute mess. Sorting through that was very troubling. How anomalies in the looting are placed cause the average player to take their time slowly, actually making them take the time to search and loot for materials as they progress. And in no way is this game easy as well. So it actually takes time and effort to gather resources to continue pushing further into the radius. But you'll find that even some of the loot you encounter can be in terrible condition or almost borderline unusable. Therefore, one of my favorite mechanics comes in, fixing shit. You can actually keep an eye on the quality of weapons that you have, which eventually degrade over time, but at the very least, most of the weapons are fixable. As intense as the expeditions and the anomalies that you face are, and the discoverability of finding new artifacts, as well as like navigating the world can be, the most memorable part to me personally was fixing shit. Maybe I shouldn't say the most memorable part, but the most like relaxing part, or enjoyable part weirdly enough, was just gun maintenance. I'm not huge on ASMR, but gun cleaning and maintaining your guns is weirdly one of the most satisfying mechanics of the game. And it actually gives you more of a personal connection to the weapons that you have in your inventory. And it's a very, very simple mechanic, but like for some reason it is just very relaxing to do. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if someone dedicated an entire YouTube channel to just cleaning guns in Into the Radius, because it's actually that satisfying.
Editing Roto here. Yeah, they did. Somebody already did. Cleaning weapons for 33 minutes in Into the Radius. Thank you, Nutty AK2.
Doing this gives you more of a personal connection to the weapons that you have in your inventory, and it actually gives you a sense of responsibility to take care of those weapons so that in your time of need, they can take care of you. God, that's fucking cheesy. If you constantly take care of these guns, then you don't have to worry about the situations where, you know, you're caught in a firefight or you're getting chased down by anomalies just for your gun to unfortunately jam or even misfire mid-fight. And it's funny because you don't just clean the guns, but you also have to clean the magazines as well. And the fact that this is one of my favorite parts of the game is hilarious to me, because I actually came back from a raid with like an AK-47 and an AK-74U, and I was really hyped to get new weapons. But the thing is, those weapons were definitely an upgrade from what I was using, but I was more hyped to just clean them than actually use them. And you might be thinking to yourself, Roto, this game has so much to offer. There's so many enemy varieties, lore, engaging environments. Why is your favorite thing some mundane cleaning? And as a rebuttal, here's a completely unrelated picture to the video. It really just brings another level of like clarity and peace when you're just chilling in your hideout, even bumping up to some music or listening to a podcast, or even just chilling in the ambiance of your hideout while just cleaning as many guns as you possibly can and all of your equipment. They also made it kind of fun to just hang around in the house, because I forgot that they actually had like celebrations there. So I started off my raids eating some cake, lighting up some sparklers, as well as like sitting down and playing guitar. So they really helped make the home base feel like a home, as opposed to just a spot where you have to short rest and heal up and stock up again. Honestly, this game offers so many complex mechanics in comparison to the average VR game that this could be an hour-long video easily. There's just so many awesome things that the developers created with this game that I don't think are talked about enough. When looking back at Into the Radius, I see a game with a passionate dev team and community that dedicated so much time, effort, and love towards a title that they kept up to date pretty often and continually, with clear communications of what they were striving for. Something that I wish most devs would do nowadays, but we don't actually see enough, and it's only really prevalent among indie developers as well as most VR companies. Well, I guess a lot of VR companies are also indie developers, so. They also helped create an environment that constantly kept you on your toes, as well as a fantastic gameplay loop that would consistently stay challenging, no matter how far you got into the game or no matter how much knowledge you acquired of the world ahead of time. It kind of brings that same sense that Lethal Company does, where you like start to realize and figure out the types of monsters that are among your world, and then you start to figure out how to combat them as best as you can. Some you have to keep your distance from, some you can melee, some are one shot in the head, some require armor piercing bullets as opposed to subsonic ammo. There's just so much that this game has to offer. But regardless of how much research you do, there is still an overwhelming threat in the Radius. And now, after looking back at what Into the Radius was and brought to the VR scene, I'm even more excited about what the sequel is going to bring. And we can even start off on the fact that the sequel is going to have co-op. So actually bringing a buddy into the Radius along with you seems downright terrifying, but also hilarious. But with co-op in the game, I'm very excited to see what they make of the second one. That's the video. Join the new Discord. Please like, comment, subscribe, leave.